Hello friends! Welcome back to Belle's Library. I'm Heather and I am bringing you guys a new recommendations video today. If you haven't already, please get down below and subscribe to my channel before you forget, and then we will go ahead and get started on talking about some sci-fi recommendations for beginners getting into this genre. So I feel as though I am kind of a beginner to this genre, but I have been reading quite a bit of sci-fi, especially this year. I've really gotten going on some reading here, and I have some insights on what I feel like has been easy for me easing into this genre, and books that I've just really enjoyed that I think, might be good for you to check out if you are kind of newer to reading science fiction. So we're just going to run through, I think I have like 6 or 7 books, and I'll tell you a little bit about them and why I think they might be good for a beginner sci-fi reader and all that good stuff. Okay, so book number 1 is going to be To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. Now, this is actually a novella, which I think makes it a little bit more accessible and easy to get into, because you're not getting into a giant book, you're just kind of dipping your toes in the water a little bit. And I also really appreciated the way that Becky Chambers wrote some of the science into this story. I think she does a beautiful job of writing and just making you feel immersed in the atmosphere and the world, but also there's quite a bit of different science elements to it, and she does a good job of explaining them in ways that are easy to understand, but also include it in there without it being like over-explaining to where you're getting bored. So I think that definitely this is a really great book to get into the genre with. A little brief synopsis here about what it's about. We're basically following this crew that is on this spaceship, and they go into a cryonic sleep for, I think it's like 30 years or something, and they're waking up, and basically they're going on a mission. They're going to go to it's like 6 or 7 different planets, and they're not there to look to try and colonize onto these planets from Earth, but just to explore these worlds and get information and study them and just find out more. Just basically exploratory. They're just trying to check it out, and they're trying not to leave an imprint on these worlds at all. They don't want to mess with any of their ecosystems or anything like that. They're just there to kind of check out all these different planets. I think that it's just amazing, some of the different imagery that Becky Chambers is able to come up with in talking about these different planets, and she brings in a lot of different scientific ideas and facts as well that kind of can base on these different things. Like, if this planet had a lot of this gas, it would be doing this or whatever. I also think she does a really interesting job of talking about the idea of going into a cryonic sleep in between different planets they're going to and stuff, and how that would affect the body and what changes would need to be made and what it would be like to wake up and what you would need to do to kind of get your body moving and doing its thing again. So I thought that was really intriguing. She also brings in some real world things for us and kind of looks back at Earth, and they have to communicate back to Earth after all of these different years going by, and they learn about how the Earth is changing so much, and this is going on, and now this is happening, and it's, a very interesting to be able to see kind of things that could happen with the Earth. And, looking back at fashion trends, if we looked back 30 years on fashion trends, we'd be like, well, I don't know about that one. So imagine they're kind of doing the same thing. So it was very well thought out, and it was a fun novella. So I would recommend for sure. So the next book that I'm going to recommend, I actually got in an Owl Crate box, and I really enjoyed it. There's only 1 book out in the series so far. I think it's going to be 2 books, but it might be 3. But that's going to be Goddess in the Machine by Laura Beth Johnson. I feel like this was a very easy, quick read that just kind of got me into some of the fun sci-fi elements as well. I find that I like things to do with space and cryonic sleeps and going into the future in that way. And so this kind of is in a similar vein to that. basically we have Andra here, and she is supposed to be going into a chronic sleep for 100 years, and her and a bunch of people are going to be traveling to another planet because Earth is dying. And instead, she ends up waking up in 1,000 years, and it's in a strange place. Everybody that she was traveling with before is gone, dead, and all these people around her are calling her a goddess. And she's like, what is going on? And then we also follow Zaid, and he's the one who woke her up and found her, and he basically is the exiled prince, and he's trying to get his throne back, and he's hoping that Andra's going to somehow help him. And there's definitely some very interesting twists at the end that I was like surprised by, and I'm very curious as to where this is going to go in the future. And then also I personally, this is something I would note, I found the writing style very, very interesting, and I thought it was a really well done touch to this story. Basically, whenever we're talking and we're in Zaid's perspective, he talks a little bit different, because if you think about like how people talked, you know, a couple hundred years ago back in Shakespeare time, it was very different. It was similar, and you can kind of like pick things apart and put things together, but it was different. So that kind of happens in this world as well, and Zaid has different words for certain things that we don't use in that same way. I was able to kind of pick up on it after a chapter or two, and I felt like I felt like it added a little something different and fun to the story. I have heard that some people have found that to be a little bit harder to read through some of those chapters, but I personally really enjoyed it, and I felt like as soon as you got the flow of it after a couple of chapters, it was pretty good. So I definitely would recommend this one. I think that it's a lighter, easier writing style, besides, you know, having a little bit of different syntax there, and the story is just easy to cling on to. It almost, if you read a lot of fantasy, I think it kind of is, it feels kind of fantasy in certain areas as well, so it might be an easy jump into the sci-fi realm if you tend to read a lot of like YA fantasies as well. Okay, so the next book we're going to talk about multiverse travel in, and I thought this book was very intriguing with its premise, and I also really enjoyed the fact that it was a standalone. So we're going to be talking about The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson, and again, I think the fact that it's a standalone is great for beginners, because you're like, okay, do I want to get into this huge long series? What if I don't even like the genre? So why not pick up a book that you can just pick up the one book, it's a standalone, and you can just kind of get into that world. See if you like having multiple universes to go to. So in this book, we're basically following Kara, and we've figured out how to travel into other universes. And there's like 300 something Earths in all of these different, that's how many different verses we have, right, in this multiverse. But if you try to travel to a world where your doppelganger is still on that planet, then you basically, it's going to figure out some way to only have one of you there, and so you're probably not going to make it. And so Kara's died on almost all of the Earths except for like 8 or something like that. And so she's perfect for being able to travel around and get information on all of these different multiverse areas. I'm not great with all of the terminology, so I'm sorry guys. Terminology. I don't think that's a word either. Anyways, yeah, get my gist here. And basically on one of the Earths she's traveling to, she died on this one in some kind of mysterious way and kind of gets herself into a little bit of a predicament. I remember this story through the first half, very like you were moving through it quickly. There was a lot of kind of action going on, but you weren't super invested in the characters yet because you hadn't learned about them. But then it kind of takes a step back and you start learning a little bit more about Kara and about Del, who is her handler, and some of her family and different stuff like that. And I just really felt like that worked out well. And then, you know, we're trying to cram it into one book, so it is a little bit quicker and you're going through things a little faster, but overall I really enjoyed this story, and I think it's a great one just to kind of get a feel for if you are interested in books that kind of follow that multiverse, traveling between these different universes, worlds kind of idea. And if you don't want to really start into a huge series when you're not totally sure that you're going to like it. Next up, we are going to talk about a series, and that is the Renegade series. You have Renegades, Arch Enemies, and Supernova. So I'm just going to hold Renegades here. And this is actually a superhero sci-fi, so another kind of realm of science fiction that you can explore. And we are basically following Nova, and she is an anarchist, which are basically, you have all these prodigies, which are basically superheroes. They have some kind of power to them, and the Renegades have saved humanity and overthrown the anarchist to bring about peace, and they run the government and everything like that, and the anarchists were kind of exiled. And Nova is one of the anarchists, and she ends up infiltrating into the Renegades to try and bring them down because she doesn't agree with what is going on and how they've been treated. And then we also follow Adrian, which is someone that she meets when she infiltrates, and his parents help run the Renegades, and he's a part of the Renegades, and so he's kind of very much on that side of things. And there's so much fun, like, gray area in here where you're just like, they're both kind of learning a little bit more about both sides of things and what is really right and wrong. And there's just, I find it very intriguing, the discussions that Marissa Myers puts into the story. Very fun, but then also, like, it's a fun superhero story, and you are following these renegades as they're trying to, you know, fight crime and everything that's going on. So anyways, the reason that I think that this would be a really good beginner sci-fi recommendation is because Marissa Myers' writing is so easy to get into. She just has this writing that you can just flow right into. It's super quick and easy, and you can just, I don't know, fly through her books so well, and it's not confusing in any way, and you can just kind of immerse yourself into the world. She almost has this, I mean, they're definitely, you know, more sci-fi based books, and they're in that way, but if you're used to reading more contemporary romance, those kind of genres, then I feel like this is written in a way where it's just like that easy, just read. I don't know how else to explain it, but the writing's just super easy to immerse into, and they're really fun books, and she does have very wonderful conversations and ideas behind her books that really get you thinking about everything. And talking about Marissa Meyer, I also figured I would include Cinder in here as well. Again, her writing style is very easy for a beginner sci-fi reader. And also, these are retellings. So if you like the idea of having something that is a little bit more familiar in the fact that, like, most people know the story of Cinderella, but this has a sci-fi twist to it, and Cinder is a cyborg, and she is considered like a second-rate citizen in her world because of that, even though it wasn't something that she necessarily chose. It's just something that happened to her. And then we also have these people who live on the moon, and they're kind of waiting to make their move on Earth, and so you have an interesting dynamic going on there. And then there's a plague happening as well, and Cinder could possibly help in this way, and she runs into the prince, and they definitely shouldn't be talking, so you got some intrigue there. I definitely want to go back and reread this and continue into the series. There's like 4 main books and then a couple other smaller companion novellas. And this is the only one I've read so far, but I know we follow some of the other kind of princess storylines, and like I think Red Riding Hood and different stuff. So this is kind of a fun one that you can have kind of a fairy tale retelling if you like that, as well as a sci-fi twist in there. And again, Marissa Meyer's super easy writing to just immerse into. And the last series that we're going to talk about is the Illuminae files. So you have Illuminae, Gemina, and Obsidio. Ooh, these are chunkers. If you've been around my channel, you've definitely heard me talk about Illuminae before. I absolutely love this book. It's one of my favorite books last year, and really what got me into really enjoying and wanting to read more science fiction. So basically we're following Katie and Ezra, and their home planet gets attacked, and right after they break up. And so they're trying to escape, and they get picked up by a science vessel that's in the area and their battleship, and they're basically on the run, trying to get away from who attacked them, and they're trying to figure out what the heck's going on and why they got attacked and what's not being told to them. And it's very interesting. There's so many different twists and turns. I definitely recommend not like fully reading the synopsis, because I did not, and everything was just so surprising to me. I was just like, wait, what? This is happening? Oh my gosh, this is happening? So I'm not really going to tell you like a ton of the different things, but if you wanted to, you could read into the synopsis a little bit more and find out a little bit more of some of the different stuff that comes up during their adventures. But I really, really enjoyed this. It kept me entertained. I read it in one day. It's like 600 pages. It was super fun and immersive, and I flew through it. And of course, it's in space. I think that's probably my favorite science fiction. But why I think this is a great option for a beginner sci-fi reader is because it is told in this kind of mixed media format, and I think it makes it a little more accessible. It makes it fun to read. There's like interviews and emails, and there's map layouts of the different ships and just different reports, and I just think that it could make it a little bit more accessible, and it definitely brings a little bit more interest and intrigue, at least to me. Also, there's a fun, sarcastic humor little bit to this, and I think that's kind of fun to lighten the mood and just make it more fun. And if you are more of an audiobook reader, or you think that would help you get into reading science fiction, the audiobooks are really good for these too. They have like sound effects and a full cast, and they're really just well done. I have listened to the audiobook as well, and definitely very much enjoyed on that one. And then Gemina, we're following actually two other main characters, and then I haven't read Obsidio, but I'm pretty sure that all of them end up kind of coming together in Obsidio. So those are my science fiction recommendations for all of you beginners out there, or just if you want to read more science fiction and you haven't read one of these, then pick it up, definitely. These are some of my favorites that I've been really enjoying, and I'm going to continue reading more science fiction, and I will give you guys more recommendations as they come through. But I hope you guys will stick around and subscribe so you can hear all of those recommendations. And also, I am getting a little bit more active on my Instagram. It's a goal of mine, so you might check that out. I will have a link for my Instagram and my Goodreads down below for you guys. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful reading day, month, and year, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye!